here. I'm LeeSaar. I'm a professor of computer science here at Amherst. Before we start, I want to thank some of the many people who helped make this happen. First, from the Theater and Dance Department, several people, Jason Kim, Jonathan Doyle, Sean Ventura, and Ryan O'Donnell, very important to make things happen. Also, the AI and Liberal Arts team, especially Morgan Salmon, Hope Sai, and Ryan G. All help you in great ways. I want to, for like 1 minute, tell you a little bit about artificial intelligence and liberal arts. The idea for this program is to engage the entire Amherst community in thinking about using, critiquing, generally engaging with AI and what it needs and what it is doing maybe to our world and what we should be doing about that. And to do that in an interdisciplinary way, multi-way interactions. This is not something just for computer scientists to be talking about. Maybe that's the least important part. So bringing people together around what AI is and what it means for us. Recently we had a panel on AI and war. It was a tough one, but it's very important. On AI and art, and we've had talks by scholars on AI and philosophy of mind, AI and social science, AI and theater, and that was just this semester. So we've been doing a lot of things like this. And if you want to find out more, go to liberal-arts.ai and you'll see what we have done and what we're doing. In a moment, the plan for this evening is in a moment we have a performance by Dr. Mariel Pettee, and then we're going to have the performance itself, which is about 45 minutes. And then we'll have a brief question and answer session, about 15 minutes is what we're thinking. And then we're going to have a reception. There will be food out on the patio and mingle and get some refreshments and continue the discussion. Now, some of you may remember Dr. Pettee from her talk that she gave last year. She was remote, but we had an in-person audience here. And you can watch the video of that event at our website. And she presented work on her intersection of machine learning and dance. And it was so intriguing that we decided we had to have her back in person and for a live performance, and that's what we're here for this evening. So Dr. Pettee is a physicist and the Chamberlain Postdoctoral Research Fellow at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, where she builds new AI tools to help scientists make discoveries in particle physics and astrophysics. Her thesis work with the ATLAS experiment at CERN involved the search for a rare interaction with the Higgs boson decay into a pair of tau particles. She is also a performing artist engaged in contemporary dance and theater, and since 2017 she's led independent teams of researchers to generate choreography with AI models that are trained on her own movements, and that's what her talk was about last year. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Mariel.
Hi all, I'm so thrilled to see all of you here tonight, and I won't speak for too long because I'm so thrilled to show this performance to you all. So this is the first showing on a full scale of this work that I've been developing for close to 6 years now that works at the intersection of AI and choreography. So the work that you're going to see tonight is derived from 2 of these AI models that I've built with various teams of researchers over the past several years. And these models are trained exclusively on my own movements. So they've learned what dance and movement is through the lens of my body. And then in the rehearsal room with my 6 fabulous dancers, we've engaged with this material to actually try to figure out how do we turn this into workable, interesting, compelling choreography. So I'm very interested to see what you receive from it tonight, and we'll have time for a couple minutes of questions with the audience at the end of the show. And I have tons of folks to thank, many teams of scientists and other artists who I've worked with over the past few years, as well as my cast, as well as my composer, chairman, and my family who's here tonight. So thank you to Morgan and to Lee to inviting me here. Enjoy the show. Thank you.
Picture yourself sitting on a folding chair. You feel blades of grass between your toes. You tilt your head slightly back. Your hand rises to block the sun. You lean forward and you feel your skin, sticky with sweat, peel off the plastic. The space between your shoulders tugs and crackles. You stand, and the whole universe collapses inwards. Your gravity is so immense, an earthquake shivers out from your core. The trees around you have become 1,000 feet tall. You're stretching your body like a prehistoric bird, and then your body is suddenly all right angles. Suddenly time is all right angles. You are a praying mantis losing its balance on a twig. Your body is an antenna receiving an electric signal from deep space. Your body is a fundamental particle, seemingly in many places at once. You're trying on a pair of shoes that are too small for your feet. You're flipping a pancake on the stove while slipping on ice. Your leg cramps uncontrollably in the middle of the night. Your left foot spirals, then unfurls like a new leaf. You are torn in two directions. Your feet sink into a thick pile of mud. You are under a mosquito net, pushing it away from your face. You swivel your legs and they pass right through your torso. You're expecting someone to drop flowers from the sky. You arch your back and your hips become electric. You're gyrating wildly on the dance floor, completely lost in the moment. Your blood is carbonated. Your limbs feel like they belong to someone else. You are a comet streaking through the sky. Your body is made of fire. Your body is made of stone. Your body is a kaleidoscope. Your body is a rubber band. Your body is a soft bird. Your body is dissolving. 3 dimensions become 2, become 11,
So thank you, everybody. That was amazing. And we're just going to take a few minutes and have some audience questions, but I thought I'd start with one very general question for Mariel, which is, can you tell us briefly, in general terms, what we were seeing? What was the process? What was the role of technology? Particularly intrigued with the relation between the models we saw on the screen at the end and how that fit into the overall picture of the choreography.
Yeah, so what you saw tonight was the result of basically 2 to 3 machine learning models that I've developed over the past few years. So they have different purposes. One of them is used for generative movements, so to create movements out of thin air, or it also creates variations on existing phrases from my actual movement data, so I can tweak and modify and expand on existing phrases that I like. The second model that we worked with instead looks at relationships between different parts of my body, and so it groups different relationships together, and it notices patterns in how different parts of my body move together. And so the movements that you saw tonight, some of them were from me, a lot of them were from this fabulous cast, and a lot of them came explicitly from these models. So what you saw was really sort of a negotiation of me and the cast thinking about how to actually put these models into practice, because they've been constrained to a screen for quite a long time. And putting them onto human bodies, as you can imagine, is a bit of a task. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you so much. I want to open it up to questions from the audience. Donovan, actually, can we, maybe if I can get her?
Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. That was quite an eye-opening performance. It was a rather moving performance in a way that was, for me, very unexpected. Because, you know, I'm actually a visual artist, but I do admire performing arts. And I guess my question is sort of twofold. One is, as you're putting these parts together, I know in my understanding of dance and the way that I've learned about dance is about storytelling. And when I see these parts coming together in these movements, I'm trying to understand what that story is. And so that's one question, what is this story? And the second thing is just probably an observation as being a visual person, but I was really struck by the shapes and the forms and the spaces made between dancers that was quite unusual and not necessarily natural, as what we consider natural. And that was exciting to me because I saw the body move in a way that was quite unexpected and exciting. So just those 2 observations in this performance. It was quite moving, so thank you.
Thanks for those comments. I'm glad that that came across. I think I started this process years ago thinking that the task was mostly, can a machine learning model imitate human behavior? And so I thought that a successful model would produce completely physically realistic, smooth, beautiful results. And I found that I hit that checkpoint fairly early on in the process, and so then the task sort of inverted, and it became about how can these models move me and move other people, and how can they expand what we think of as even possible with the body. And so that informed a lot of our improvisation scores, is putting impossible movements onto dancers and sort of pushing the model to its extremes to really see how we can break it. And I think to your question about story, I'd say that in general my choreography isn't so much story-oriented, but it's oriented around shape and form and rhythm and relationships. I also have a background in theater, and so I'm interested in seeing authenticity and interaction happen on stage. And maybe you could say that there's a meta story happening about how do we represent AI and technology. There's a cartoon image in our head of AI as like a killer robot, or maybe just a bunch of points connected by lines. And so I was interested in reimagining the story that we were telling about AI as one that was more organic and integrated into the body and textural and physical. And I wonder if any of the dancers want to talk about some of the oddness and unusualness of the movement.
backgrounds in dance and what that looks like to us. And we started from this very authentic movement, like what is our actual movement and what does that look like? And I think a lot of dance training is what is the picture, what is the story? And to kind of strip that down and just try to mimic something that seems impossible was really hard at first. Because I told Mariel, I was like, I feel crazy. Like, I feel like this looks really bad. But then you watch videos and you're like, no, it's telling a story itself. It's like, what is that, kind of? And I think that relationship is almost like us looking at animals and their movement. And so it's just a different type of movement and that exploration.
Yeah, I have an example. It gave us a lot of impossible, like this like Jupyter Lab notebook gave us these animations, 5-second animations of this wireframe which you saw, and we were tasked with creating choreography out of that. So it was doing these crazy things like turning your hips in 180 degrees. Like imagine my hip is like that, but my feet are in the same place. So you remember there's this quartet here, and we figured out that to get your hips around, you just bring the feet behind. And that's how this came. Yeah, so that was really fun. It really tickles my brain as I'm a computer scientist, so like coming into dance much later in life, like, it's really fun. I love the brain teasers. Yeah.
It's a good point just to sort of conclude that I think a lot of the dance that interests me is like a puzzle. It's actively about like thinking through a problem in a situation that you're embodied in. So, great point.
Questions in the back here?
Hello, thank you for the performance. I have several questions, but I'll just ask one. My question that I typically ask is, where do you see yourself in relation to Merce Cunningham's work that really is doing sort of similar processes back in the 80s?
Great question. I mean, I would be flattered to be mentioned in the same sentence as Merce Cunningham. But I see this work as kind of an homage or like a continuation of a long tradition in contemporary modern dance and many forms of dance of incorporating technology and games of chance and randomness into their process. And so I think a cool part of this process has been understanding the longevity of technology and formulation and formulas and mathematics, randomness into these processes. And I think in this process, it was cool because it was tunable. So there was a sense of like I could decide when I wanted to be completely surprised and when I wanted to kind of give over to the technology, and times when I wanted to wrestle control and exert more feedback. And so there were times when we were taking the movements explicitly from the model, and there were also times when we were thinking more about the how than the what. Like, how is the model learning? By compressing movement and then decompressing movement. And so we would translate that into a score. So Ilya's my dramaturg also, so I wonder if you...
Sure. I think one of the questions we were asking about early on is how dance also is a form of technology. So if technology is a means of human innovation or makes things easier, facilitates communication, how is dance already functioning in this way to promote reciprocity, interpersonal understanding? Mariel and I met 10 years ago in Jill Johnson's course, so I think we come more from a Forsyth tradition, and I think there's also this question of specificity, where phrase work becomes aleatoric or chance-based, where agency lives in making choices in choreography from a model, but also from our own bodies, and thinking about the ways in which technology inhibits creativity or prevents us from making the kinds of choices that feel natural on the one hand, and on the other hand, I think coming back to the question you're asking of making choices that we wouldn't make but discovering something new. So definitely a process of discovery, of agency, of grappling with what feels natural and unnatural, or authentic and inauthentic.
I would like to move us shortly to the reception when we can continue our conversation, but I have time for one more question, perhaps.
Hi. I was just wondering what kind of dance everyone does, like typically, and then also if each of you could tell us like what was the most surprising movement that you found from the AI-generated choreography.
Hi, I'm Kellen. My movement background is contemporary, modern dance, but I'm classically trained in ballet as well, so that really influences my lines. And I think what most surprised me, movement-wise, I feel like the glitches. Every time we would generate a new version of the model, there would always be some kind of glitch that comes from the inside of you. So rather than thinking of an external glitch, how can it generate until it becomes so big that it explodes? So lots of glitching.
Hi, I'm Iris. I'm a physical therapist by day, but my background in dance is originally ballroom dancing and Latin and standard, and then contemporary, modern, ballet, jazz, all that. The most surprising thing for me was actually learning other people's interpretations of the AI, of the model, because I would take the images very literally, and it would be very simplistic, because it would be like so overwhelming that I'd have to pick one thing to focus on, while some of the other dancers were much more grandiose and like did their own interpretation of it that I would have never in my life attempted. So putting their movement and their interpretations into my body was very challenging and fun.
Hi, I'm Jessie. My movement background is kind of hard to answer. I started dancing more recently than a lot of folks up here, and I have a blend of a little bit of lots of different techniques. Dance theater is a place where I live. I have a theater background, and most recently I dance in more postmodern work. And I think the thing that was most surprising for my body was Mariel's model has this way of collapsing on itself very quickly, and it almost resembles like falling to the ground, but your shape also changes, which is interesting. At first I took that as like, oh, the model really fails. It really doesn't understand the body. But if you see it as a question that the model's asking you, it's like, oh, well, the model has, its ability is limited, but if I try and replicate what it's doing, my ability is also limited. And so it's just invited me to explore the ways that the body naturally can collapse. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Cassie. My background in dance started from a gymnastics starting point, but I trained in multiple different styles, and the most surprising thing, I think, I also have a degree in kinesiology, which attracted me to this work, and the relationships really interested me, and putting that on the body, because I've seen it in like a science way, but to interpret that in movement and not move with predeterminedness, but instead be like, okay, if my foot moves and is connected to my head, like what does that do? So that was really fun to play with, and you saw that a lot in the piece. So.
I'd say the movement that surprised me most, I mean, maybe like Iris, there's a lot of scientists and academics in this crew too. I think I had a very scientist perspective on this model when I first started. I loved the data and I loved the realistic output, and I wanted to be very faithful to it. And so a surprising element of this process has been connecting to the poetry of some of this movement, to try to assign language to some of this, to see the many different ways that a single cast of 6 people can take my movements. So the idea that it's trained on one person, but it can be applied in all these different ways, totally surprised me.
Hello, I'm Ben Guzman. I am a software engineer and computer scientist, and I came to dance really late, and mostly through improvisation. I dipped my toes into ballet and modern, but just really enjoy improvising. The thing that surprised me a lot was we asked ChatGPT to write some choreography in the style of a choreographer we like, and I picked Meg Stewart. All respect to her, love her, she's awesome, makes amazing work. But it created this whole thing, and I turned it in all sorts of ways, and it became the last solo at the very end that I do in the corner. Really interesting textures and like shapes. Like I never expected to be like this and doing this thing. that was like a roll. It was a roll on the floor actually to start, and I didn't want to do it on the floor, so I rotated it up. Anyway, yeah, thank you.
My name is Ilya. My background, I came to dance via figure skating when I was a small child, and have spent time sort of going through formal and informal practices, social ballroom dancing, Ukrainian and Russian and Jewish folk dancing, ballet, ballroom, and contact improvisation. And so one of the things that attracted me to this project was just thinking about the interpretation of the model and the way in which the movement, because they're just 5-second clips, you can sort of fill out what the next movement will be, and make those kinds of choices and say, oh yeah, that's a postmodern movement, or that's a balletic movement, or that's a folk movement. That's just someone taking a break, and there's something about to happen now.
Awesome, that was wonderful. Thank you for the question. So there were many other hands, but there's some yummy treats out there, and I want to invite everybody to grab some yummy treats and continue the conversation. Thank you very much.